Welcome to another edition of Quoth Raven, who's Bright Raven. It's Friday, September 9th, 2022, and that means movie night. Tonight's double feature discussion is the classic 1971 film Willard and its sequel Ben from 1972 in the suspenseful horror genre. Don't know if anyone's going to show up as guests. I know Monster Fan said he was unable to attend this week. But there were other people who were invited, so we'll see if anybody pops up. No one has yet, so if someone pops in, fine. I do want to make a quick shout out to our friend John Norris. He contracted COVID, tested COVID positive this morning, and is isolating at home. Fortunately, he lives at home. Probably got it at church. That's what it appears to be. But he's not feeling very well, obviously, and we wish him a quick, speedy recovery, and take care of yourself, John. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Our first movie tonight is Willard, directed by Daniel Mann, screenplay by Gilbert Ralston, based on Ratman's Notebooks by Stephen Gilbert, produced by Mort Briskin. Starring Bruce Davidson as Willard, Elsa Lanchester, best known as Bride of Frankenstein as Willard's mother, Ernest Borgnine as Al, who is the boss at Willard's work that used to be owned by his father, but Al swindled him out of the company, and Sandra Locke, who plays, I can't remember her name, but we'll get to it in a minute, but the secretary who tries to befriend and help Willard in the story. Production companies bring Bing Crosby Productions and Reicher Entertainment, or also known as Reicher Entertainment. I'm not sure. Some people say it's both, or that Bing Crosby Productions was Reicher. Who knows? Distributed by Cinerama Releasing Corporation. Release date February 26, 1971. The running time of hour and 35 minutes in the genre of suspenseful horror. What it's about. Willard Stiles, played by Bruce Davidson, is a meek social misfit who develops an affinity for communicating with rats. He lives in a large house with his cranky and decrepit mother, Henrietta, played by Elsa Lanchester, and works for a shyster, Al Martin, Ernest Borgnine, who has swindled Willard's deceased father out of his company. On his 27th birthday, he comes home to a surprise birthday party thrown by his mother, where all the attendees, of course, are her friends. After leaving the party in embarrassment, he notices a rat in his backyard and tosses it a piece of his birthday cake. Henrietta sees this and tells him to eliminate any and all rats near the house. Reluctantly somewhat, Willard uses food and a plank bridge to lure them into a pit in the backyard, and then begins to fill the pit with water to drown them. However, moved by the rats' piteous squeals as they realize their plight, he replaces the plank and allows them to get to safety. He later begins playing with a rat he names Queenie, and a white rat that he names Socrates, who becomes his best companion. Other rats emerge as well, particularly a larger black specimen whom he names Ben. At work, Willard has been tasked with an overwhelming number of accounts by his boss, Al Martin. He asks Al for a raise, having not received one since his father's death, despite working hours and weekends. Of course, Al refuses and pressures Willard to sell him his house instead if he wants money. Willard sneaks into a party that Al is hosting, opens a rat-filled suitcase, and urges them to get all the food. The guests are terrorized by the rats, and Al destroys the catering tables while trying to fend them off. The next day, Willard's mother dies. He is informed that she had no money and that the house has been heavily mortgaged to sustain them financially. In other words, he's going to lose the house if he doesn't sell it. Of course, Willard starts bringing Socrates and Ben to the office on Saturdays to keep him company while he's the only one there. His friend and a temporary assistant, Joan, that's the one played by Sandra Locke, gives him a cat named Chloe to comfort him, but he hands Chloe off to a stranger. He's not interested in cats, he's got rats. Meanwhile, the rat colony is growing, and Willard can't afford to keep feeding them. After overhearing one of Al's friends boasting of a large cat withdrawal, he sneaks into the man's house and orders his rats to tear up the bedroom door. The man and his wife flee the house upon seeing the rats, and Willard steals the cash. The next day, he goes to work, and a worker has spotted some of the rats. Al bludgeons Socrates to death, which devastates Willard. When Joan refuses to persuade Willard to sell his house to Al, he fires her and Willard both, believing that unemployment will force Willard to sell the house. Why Al wants this house, on top of everything else, is really kind of inexplicable. It's not that great looking a house. It's kind of old and stuff, but I guess he could make some money on the real estate market for it. But that night, while Al is at work, Willard enters the office with his rats. He confronts Al over the death of Socrates, the mistreatment of his father, and Al's machinations to buy the house out from under him. As Al attempts to attack him, Willard in turn orders the rats to attack Al. Disoriented by the swarming rats, Al falls out the window to his death, and the rats eat the corpse, much to Willard's horror. After witnessing Al's gruesome death, he abandons the rats at the scene. The next day, he replaces the remaining rats into crates and dunks them back into the backyard pit and tries to seal up any holes from which the rats could enter his house. Later, Willard has dinner with Joan, again, played with Sandra Locke, at his house, telling her of his newfound self-confidence, which he contributes to her and Socrates. Over the course of their conversation, however, he sees Ben staring sinisterly at him from a shelf. And he's like, what's going on? I thought I got rid of these things. Investigating, he finds the hordes of the same rats he attempted to drown in the pit, unaware that the rats intruded through the crates and swam to safety. He orders Joan to leave the house and locks the door behind her. Willard offers Ben the rats food, which he mixes with pesticide. Ben sniffs the pesticide box and squeals loudly, which alerts the others. Willard chases Ben upstairs, cornering him in a storage room. He barricades the door against the other rats, leaving him to face Ben alone. While Ben eludes Willard's attacks, the gnats gnaw through the door, and as they break through, Willard shouts, "I was good to you, Ben!" before the rats start to jump on him and attack him. Overwhelmed, he succumbs to the attack, and that's, it's kind of like it ends with him dying right there at the end of the film. What do I think of this? Well, the plot of the movie is pretty tight, but the pacing of the film was, for me, very slow. Borgnine is stellar in the role of Al. His death is gruesome enough for the era that this is filmed in, but if it had been done in a more grindhouse style of cinema of that era, it would have been, I think, better in some ways. It would have taken it over the top a little bit for me. I often felt that Willard's friendship with the rats should have been more supernatural in flavor, more like a mental rapport than just a friendship sort of thing. And the film sort of hints at it, but it never really quite makes a jump to the Stephen King freak level. Think like Carrie or Firestarter, only he can control rats, or think with rats and make them obey him. And that's something I felt that this film really needed. The cast was all solid in their roles, and like I said, Borgnine in particular plays the villain who gets his comeuppance to the T. Of course, the rats themselves are characters, and you feel some sensitivity for when Al kills Socrates, By the end of the film, when it's Willard versus Ben, you may feel torn about things. Does Willard deserve his fate? I think so. He merely used the rats to his own ends, and then when they stop being useful in his own mind, he goes to drown them. I was good to you, Ben. My ass. The film is plenty creepy. Willard's kind of a creepy guy, to be quite frank with you. The scenes where they have the hordes of rats create some great jump moments, but the slow burn pacing of the movie and the lack of real supernatural element left the film not quite in the scary horror range for me personally. It's not quite as Hitchcockian as The Birds from 1963 either. The rats are a little bit more anthropomorphic here, as they have been individualized and given names. They have certain personality traits that the Birds in Hitchcock's film simply don't have. And so the rats are ironically not as scary because you're meant to emotionally connect with them on a certain level, whereas you don't connect with the birds. They're just a horrific nature attack, so to speak. All in all, many film critics think the story is good, but it just doesn't have the horror elements, and the rat's destructive capabilities doesn't take it far enough, and I'm inclined to agree with that assessment. This film was rated GP, which means all ages, but with parental guidance recommended. That was the last year, 71, where they used that rating. This, of course, would be then PG the following year in 72. I have not watched the 2008 remake because I haven't had access to it yet. So I don't know if they amped it up to a PG-13 or an R and put the supernatural element in the new version or not. But I would recommend this film for ages 13 and up, and I give it 3 stars. John is feeling well enough to join us in the chat. That's good. Good evening. I hope you're feeling a little bit better, John. And he said he just finished watching these films for the first time. So I hope that I know you were home today convalescing, but I'm just hoping you're feeling better. We'll go with Ben from 1972. This is the sequel, of course. This one's directed by Phil Carlson. Same screenplay writer Gilbert Ralston and the same producer Mort Briskin. This film stars Lee Montgomery as the young boy Danny who befriends Ben in this one. Joseph Campanella, Arthur O'Connor, Meredith Baxter as Lee Montgomery's older sister, and Rosemary Murphy as Lee Montgomery's character's mother. Same production companies, Bing Crosby Productions, Riser Entertainment, same distribution company. This was released on June 23rd, 1972. It has a running hour of 1 hour and 34 minutes. Again, horror, suspense, and rated PG. It's ironic that there's a different director, but and a different cast, of course, but almost everything else is pretty much the same. They cut it to like 1 minute of each other to the film, to its predecessor. It's based on the same content, same screenplay writer, same producer. Quite interesting because these films are so quite different from each other in a lot of ways. Let's talk about them. This takes place immediately after the events of Willard, where we see a quick recap of the death of Willard and the aftermath of the police investigation of his death. Ben and the rats have attacked and killed Willard, and when the police come, they attack and kill a police officer as well, which sets off a chain of events where Ben and the rats are hunted by law enforcement. A police detective named Cliff Kirtland, which I believe is the one played by Campanella, orders have an exterminator to kill the rats, but Ben hears this and communicates to the other rats that it's time to leave the area. Together, Ben and the other rats go into the sewers. Shortly thereafter, a lonely boy named Danny Garrison, played by Lee Montgomery, who has a severe heart condition, lived with his sister Eve, Meredith Baxter, and his mother Beth, played by Rosemary Murphy. Danny finds and befriends Ben while playing in his work shed with marionettes that he crafts himself, and he becomes the boy's best friend. However, quickly, like later in the day or maybe the next day, Ben and the other rats attack a food truck, which causes the driver to crash and kill another driver, which, of course, continues to escalate the issues with the rats and in the community. And now they're really wanting all the rats killed. Norris says he liked Willard a lot more than he thought he would. He thought it was wonderfully acted, particularly by Bruce Davison. Yeah, I thought all of them were good, but I really think Borgnine's the one who stole the show, personally. But that's just me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Davison was good in the film as well. The next day, Danny plays on the piano with a song he's created for Ben, which, of course, in the film is actually later played in the tail end of the movie by none other than Michael Jackson, very young Michael Jackson when he was with the Jackson 5, but nevertheless, still Michael Jackson. Later that night, Ben and the other rats invade a grocery store for food and destroy the entire store. Now it's just gone way overboard, and everybody's trying to kill the rats with poison and traps throughout the neighborhood. But Danny tells Ben about the traps set up by the police. So then Ben knows to avoid certain things and whatever. Just then a bully comes into the area, and he's trying to be rude to Danny. And Ben and the other rats attack the bully by biting him in the legs. The bully flees. But, of course, now that the rats have bitten someone, now they're even more of a threat to the community because rats have rabies and blah, 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 blah. So now they're definitely going to be in trouble. And the bully comes back with his mother and the police. The police tell Danny they want to see Ben, so Danny brings him to the work shed and throws a marionette puppet that he made that looks like Ben. Of course, the police with the bully and the boy's mother leave the work shed, threatening him if they were, and of course they're probably going to sue for injuring the kid and everything else, which does not make things work too well for him or his family. Obviously, Danny's mother and sister are concerned about the young boy with his heart issues, and they're worried about being sued, and they're worried about Ben and the rats' potential health hazards to him as well. Unfortunately, because of this, things gradually take a downhill turn as Ben's colony becomes even more violent as they search for food, resulting in several deaths in the community. John says for a long time he had no idea that the song Ben was written for this movie, and it really doesn't fit the movie in my opinion, but that's just me. Eventually the police go into the sewers and destroy the rat colony with flamethrowers and shotguns after trapping them, but somehow Ben survives this attack and makes his way back to Danny. At the very end of the movie, a tearful and overjoyed Danny finds the injured Ben in his work shed, and he tries to heal him, determined not to lose his friend, and we get a close-up of Ben's face looking at us kind of pathetically. I do think that this film tries to take the level of horror up from what Willard presented and tries to give you the rats as uncontrollable animal threat a la Hitchcock's The Birds. But it misses the mark because Ben is still humanized by his relationship with the boy, even though most everything he does as the leader of the colony is quote-unquote evil. And when I say evil, I'm not really meaning evil, because after all, they're just looking for food, or they're just looking to defend themselves from attacks from other people or others, what they consider threats to their lives. But, especially him and the others defending Danny from the bully, but everything else he does is kind of effectively destructive to everyone else around him. And, even though they're not necessarily smart enough to realize that's what they're doing, that is what they're doing, and it really doesn't make them sympathetic as much. And it makes it hard to have any emotional connection for him. And while Montgomery plays his role very well as Danny, it makes his character seem a little bit too naive to understand the dangers that the rats represent. And I felt that the ending of the film is rather lame because I don't know. I just think there should have been more supernatural flair to this film. The something that made the rats seem, especially Ben, seem a little more intelligent. I would have loved to have seen more reddish in the eyes. They usually just had the black eyes, but as you saw in the movie poster, he's got red eyes, and the red would have been, you know, yeah, a little more evilish looking, I guess you could say. John says Willard overall is a better film, and Ben was too all over the place tonally. Yeah, that's not a bad assessment. I kind of agree with that. I do think also that one of the other characters besides Danny, most of them were one-dimensional and wouldn't comparative to Willard and the cast in Willard. I'm not sure if the director of this film just wasn't able to get that much out of the cast, or if it's because the script focused more on the Danny character. But few if any of the other characters really spoke to me. So it's maybe a little bit of both. But this film is weaker than Willard as a result. And I do dislike the ending. Again, they try to keep humanizing Ben, and I'd rather he was a supernatural evil type critter in that respect. Yeah. Again, I didn't really like the song. I thought it was cheesy. It didn't really fit to me. And it felt like the writer and producer couldn't decide what to do with this film. And I think that's what John's saying. It's all over the place tonally, and what was the message they were trying to say. Now, this film doesn't completely suck, but it's not anywhere near what it could have been. And I don't think it's as strong as the first one. Again, recommend the film for ages 13 and up. And I give this film a 2.5 star rating. Okay. Since nobody else showed up in the room, John has said his piece. I think that we'll call that a show. Next week, we will be doing anime night. Pardon me. John says, I think the song removed from the context of the film is actually quite lovely, but within the context of the film, it's weird. Yeah, it doesn't. It makes very little sense in the context of the film. And yes, the song by itself is good, and the song actually did get awarded for something. I don't know if it was a Grammy or something, but it got some awards and got some notice. So it was a good song. I just don't think it was necessarily fitting for that film. Okay, next week, there'll be anime night, and we'll be discussing the classic 1988 anime film Appleseed, based on Masamune Shiro's awesome manga series. I was going to make it a double feature. Unfortunately, the newer version of Appleseed, it used to be on Tubi. It's no longer on Tubi. I don't have access to it, so we're just going to do the regular original 88 film. So that'll be next week on Friday at 8 p.m. As always, I appreciate everyone watching the show. And if you like this video or you think others might, do me a favor and hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to continue to get content from my channel. The Raven, as always, thanks you for your support. If you want to reach out to me on social media, Facebook, Lewis.BrightRaven, Twitter at LewisBrightRaven2. You can see some more of my artwork at deviantart.com/BrightRaven. You've been watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven, exclusively on YouTube. If you have questions, comments, suggestions for films to review in the future, or comics or anything like that, Quoth the Raven, LBR72@gmail.com is the address to reach me at. And if I don't get back with you, try LewisBrightRaven@yahoo.com. Tomorrow, hopefully we will have a live draw. I don't have a time set just yet. But if and when we do that, I will put a notice up on my Facebook and Twitter. So until then, have a great evening. We'll see you next time.